They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Everybody's Dead, Dave, a Red Dwarf review podcast featuring two reviewers, myself, Adam Martyn, and
myself, Phil Hawkins.
Welcome everyone to the show. If you're brand new, welcome. Glad to have you here. If you are new, the premise of the show is the two of us are going through every single Red Dwarf episode ever made, right from episode 1 all the way up until the present. And myself, I am a relatively new Red Dwarf fan. This is my first time going through the show. And Phil, your backstory is a little bit different to mine.
Well, I've just been watching it for the last several decades.
So two different perspectives.
I've watched it several times through by now as well.
Yeah, a seasoned... Is seasoned smeghead? That's not a rude thing to say, is it?
Seasoned
in the context of...
Why not?
I find this funny because, you know, that before we get into the episode, side tangent, obviously smeghead in the show is like an insult, but fans call each other, but it's not seen as like an insulty thing. It's almost like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
So it's that weird. It's a weird split. But I don't know what else you'd call a Red Dwarf fan, really. Yeah, but anyway, there's your little side tangent. But we are on series 4 of the show, episode 2, which is titled DNA. And this episode originally went out in the February of 1991, so over 30 years ago now, which is mad. And the synopsis in brief is: a mysterious derelict spacecraft containing extremely advanced technology, perhaps alien, docks with Red Dwarf. On board, they discover a DNA modifier, a genetic altering machine that can metamorphosize organic life. And when the boys from the Dwarf get their hands on it, hilarity ensues. So there you go. So yeah, DNA. Just to kick things off, I agree with Nathaniel, who was our guest last week. The scrolling title of the stuff, don't like it. It's very obnoxious. It's needlessly in your face. I don't know. I just
for some reason that season 3's was also quite in your face, and it was the same font, the same text.
Yeah,
it just didn't scroll, and for some reason that's much better.
I don't know what it is about the scroll. The scroll just really ticks me off a little bit, and I'm like, you don't need it. You don't need to scroll back, especially when it's not like half the time they're not doing it over like a static shot. They're doing it. I don't know, but I can't remember this time, but definitely last week they did it whilst characters are talking, and it's just like you don't need it. Like, don't do that. But yeah, so we have we have the guys in the like main hub, is it the engineering room, something like that, the main computer room,
control room, something
control
like that.
room.
It's basically the room with a TARDIS console in the middle of it.
It's the TARDIS console in the middle of it.
It does. It has a TARDIS console in the middle of it. It has an octagonal control console in the middle of it.
The BBC had to get some use out of that
console.
prop. They had to get some use out of it. And they're tracking... They've tracked a ship. There's a ship in space and they're trying to track it. And... But then, of course, the feed goes dead because Cat wants to plug in his hairdryer. But what did you think of this whole opening setup then?
It was good. Straight away in there, it created a feeling of like tension and, oh my, what's going on? What are they tracking? It was like they were deadly serious. Like, Kryten, both Kryten, Lister, who is very rarely serious, and Rimmer were all deadly serious, like working as a team, like they were a proper crew, which you never see really. So immediately I was, what's going on? And then it is quite brilliantly undercut by Cat coming in and plugging in his hairdryer. So I think that both those things worked quite well together. It got me really interested in what was going on, and then completely undercut it, which worked brilliantly too.
Yeah, no, I agree that the contrast of Cat with the seriousness of what they're doing was good. I hate to beat the old drum, but I'm gonna say it, Phil. I do. He knows what's coming. I do think though it was played maybe a little, not too much, but a little bit too long for my liking anyway. I like the contrast. I like the setup. I just think after the initial gag with the hairdryer, because he does it. What was it? He does a little bit again before he's like, oh right, I'll use gel. In my opinion, I don't think that was needed. I thought the joke had sold itself by that point. But Yeah, did you not mind it as much?
Yeah,
or?
no, well, I know, I think I might agree with you this time. It was, I think, that second time when they had done the joke of the power cutting out and the power had come back on, and then the power starts flickering again because he's using the power. Maybe that was a little bit too long.
Yeah, it was just that bit though. The actual, like you said, the actual joke, the setup, the undercutting of the serious stuff. I like that. That was good. And Danny John Jules sells it as always. But when the power does come back on, they do dock with this random ship. And what I loved is Rimmer turns into a bit of a conspiracy theorist. That, you know, the classic, what does he say? Oh, maybe they'll return Glenn Miller. Because he just, and it made me chuckle because I remember that being, I mean, it still is. But you know, like when social media first, like, I guess, boomed and everyone, you know, you saw loads of people being like, oh, like what, Adolf Hitler's not dead, or, you know, insert well-known person. They're not dead. They're in an underground bunker with Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe, and they're all having a great time. And I don't know, even though this was made, like, obviously nearly 30 years ago, it just reminded me of that. I don't know about you, and it really made sense. I feel Rimmer definitely would be one of those, like, Facebook conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, and he's got a thing for aliens, Rimmer.
Oh,
He's
God,
like,
he loves
throughout
the
several
aliens.
episodes, when something happens, he's like, it's gotta be aliens.
Aliens, yeah.
It's aliens. And so it makes sense that he would have a whole raft of conspiracy theories about aliens already.
I just love in this one, he just says it so deadpan, because I feel in the earlier series, when he says aliens, he, as you say, he makes like a really big deal out of it, like it's this celebratory thing. This one, Chris Barry is just like, aliens. He's sussed it, he's got it. And Chris Barry does that, I mean, we've said it before, but I just feel he does that dry delivery so well. Probably, in my opinion, the best out of the lead cast. He does the dry stuff really well.
And it never is aliens, either. Never is aliens.
Well, is this
so far?
Yeah, so far. We'll see. We've still got a long way to go. Maybe
Spoilers.
there'll be aliens. Potential spoilers.
Do you want there to be aliens?
I mean, I'm open to it because I feel Red Dwarf would do it in the very Red Dwarf way that they, you know, like we've said before, they might be a little pathetic, but not in a horrible way. In that very knowing way, you know, they might be. I can imagine Rimmer building up, you know, like these grand aliens, and then they're just, I don't know, like they were last week, like a blob. Just a standard blob.
But that's what they've done so far. They've kind of subverted, like, everything hasn't been an alien, but has been alien-like. Like the blob last week was a human-created, genetically engineered thing. And there's been androids, and then in this episode, there's something they create themselves. So it's like every time they come, they do introduce alien-like creatures. Even the polymorph, that was a human-created genetic experiment. So it's always been linking back to humanity in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just thinking on it, like with the blob last week and the polymorph and what we do come to in this week's episode, which we'll get to, I don't know whether it was intentional, but the whole flavour, now that I'm thinking of it, just reminds me of like a 50s sci-fi B-movie. In the best way, you know, like the different kinds of like you had there was a film called The Blob, and you had like the creature with 1,000 eyes, or the creature from the I was going to say The Pit. Then that's a different franchise, but you know what I mean. That sort of monster of the week sort of thing. And I don't know. I kind of like it. I kind of like the fact because it feels like they're paying homage without leaning too far into the cliche.
Yeah, there were quite a few homages within this episode, actually. There was you got the alien homage again, which they kind of reference back to. In fact, they even reference back to Polymorph at one point.
They do.
While referencing Alien as well. And I think it was a line from Aliens that they said, I think. Yeah. So, as that one had a very alien vibe. And then we'll get to the RoboCop moment later on. But,
for anyone who maybe is like me and watching this for the first time, you're like, what's the RoboCop moment? You should probably watch it. So they board the ship and they split up. And
never split up, people. Do people
rule
not
number one.
Like, never split up. And Rimmer, I thought he was going to make that point. You never split up because of what happens. But it was just because he didn't want to go with Kat.
Yeah, describing Kat with all those adjectives that basically describe Rimmer as well, which I thought was quite funny. And what I found interesting was, because I can't remember every word, but he said like, oh, why would I go with a like narcissistic, egotistical, self-centered? And in my head I was like, that's you. that's you, that's you. And I thought, oh, one of the other characters, maybe like Lister or that, is going to come out and say, like Rimmer, that's you. But they never do. But
I was expecting that too, and I don't know if that's a missed opportunity or if it was just too obvious anyway, so they went a different route.
Yeah,
I don't know, because it was kind of obvious, but then again, that's what I would have said to him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I kind of liked it because obviously I was like laughing to myself because that's what I thought, and even though I expected them to address it, I kind of like the fact they just sort of an example where in my opinion they let the joke had happen maybe for us and they moved on rather than labour on it. Because, maybe if David said, oh, Rimmer, that's you, Rimmer gone, no, that's not me, and then you would have had a whole back, and I don't know, maybe that's why, but yeah, just very interesting. And Lister and Kat end up in a room where they find a bit of tech, and Kat starts
while they're still
buttons.
exploring. I've got to point out one moment which I think this happened before they got the other two got to the room, but Kryten and Rimmer, when they're exploring. Rimmer, being his usual cowardly self, initially wants to be at the back so that Kryten can detect him from the front. And when Kryten points out, oh, actually, it's usually the people at the back that get picked off first, he's like, oh, can I somehow go in the middle? And then they do this hilarious, dance around each other as they move down the corridor, constantly revolving who's in front, which was a contender for my funniest moment. It doesn't win it, but it was a contender.
No, that was good because, again, they make very good points. It is it is the person on the front or the back, either or. And yeah, the little shuffle they do. It's things like that where, I guess just in terms of an acting perspective, it's inherently silly. And if those two didn't give it as much as they do, it wouldn't have worked. Like if they'd have just awkwardly shuffled. Do you know what I mean? The fact they sort of made it really over the top really sells the joke. So, yeah, that was a cracking moment. And, yes, we find this chamber that Lister and Kat are in, and Kat, again, another major rule broken, starts pressing everything, which is a surefire way to end up in trouble. And Lister gets encapsulated in a beautiful early 90s bright pink force field, which is, very nice, nice touch. And then metamorphosizes into a chicken.
I like the bit where, he Kat has been pressing buttons and this beam has come down, and then Lister is like, stop pressing buttons, and Kat's just like, no, I can fix this, and he's like, Lister's, go get Kryten, Kryten. He's like, no, I can do this, and he's like, no, go get Kryten, and then he turns it into a chicken.
I got a good idea. Why don't I go and get Kryten?
Yeah, it's to be honest, the chicken was the last thing I expected, because as soon as you heard the announcer go like, oh, metamorphosis incoming or whatever, because this is Red Dwarf, I was expecting something like really outrageous, I guess. And
we had already been primed for that because they had found a body which they could sense was human. They could find out from the DNA that it was human, but it had two heads, it had multiple arms, it had very more eyes than it should have. So I was kind of expecting them to go like, oh my god, they're going to turn Lister into some hideous monster.
Yeah.
And they turn him into a chicken.
But very
Which
Red
again,
Dwarf.
undercutting your sort of expectations there and sort of subverting what you kind of expect and the tension of it. That kind of works, especially in a show like this.
Yeah, I did like the moment itself. It's just, I say, the chicken. It was the last thing I was expecting. I was thinking all sorts of different wacky things, and then it was a chicken. But like you say, it's a good undercut. And when the other two arrive and they discover what's happened, much to I think Rimmer's dismay, they think, yeah, we should probably fix him. In the process, Kryten gets caught in the beam and becomes human.
I'm a real boy.
I'm a real boy mode. And the first note that I wrote, and I don't know why I doubted it, because I'm new to this, folks. This sounds so bad. I don't know what Robert Llewellyn looks like. I only know him as I've never seen a picture of him without the makeup. So when he appeared, I actually wrote, wait, is this Robert Llewellyn? But then after about 5 seconds of him talking, I was like, yeah, that's
your memory is failing you here, because you have seen Robert Llewellyn before, and we've talked about it in an episode. Because there was the episode where the replacement android is being sent, and the message that comes through.
Oh, he's the
is
yes.
him. And we talked about it being him.
But he looks slightly, because the person in this episode looks slightly different from, I don't know, I'll have to go back and check out that clip.
I mean, in that video, he had a British accent. He had his probably natural British accent, whereas here he continues having the Canadian accent, obviously, because he's still Kryten, whereas that was him playing somewhere else.
Oh,
but
well, you're right.
You did
right,
know
mate.
what Robert Llewellyn looked like.
My memory is absolutely fake. Honestly, well, that was a gut reaction there. I must have forgotten that moment because I wrote, is this Robert Llewellyn? Well, I guess that just goes to show, though, it's so rare to see him out of the Kryten makeup in this show that at this point, for me at least, it's still a wow moment that I'm like, wow, okay, it's Robert Llewellyn. And
are you familiar with older Robert Llewellyn or what older Robert Llewellyn looks like from his various TV presenting gigs?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No. Well, I will.
Much less hair.
Much less hair. Okay, I did like his hair in this. Very, very cool. Very cool hair. Hair I'd aspire to myself. And so they return to Red Dwarf, and Kryten enjoys this new humanoid form, I suppose. And there's this lovely little moment with Holly as Lister goes in, and he says, "Oh, how's he doing?"
Physically, he's fine. He's got the body of a perfectly normal 30-year-old human male, apparently.
Like a little look or a little and I just wrote Hattie's really nailing the Holly role in terms of, I mean, she broke free from it in series 3 halfway through, I think we said, but it now really does feel like this is her take on the character rather than her delivering Norman, because of course Norman Lovett probably wouldn't have said a line like that, or his Holly wouldn't have said a line like that, and it's just those little things that really make me smile and go, yeah, this now feels like your Holly. This isn't you doing Norman Lovett's Holly, if that makes sense. So yeah, I really like that little moment.
Yeah, definitely agree. And then he starts listing off some complaints as well about things not working properly because he, there was this whole scene is hilarious. And there's so much good stuff in this scene. But it starts off with him like, my nipples don't work.
You got, what was it? You got the nipples, you got the zoom.
The zoom, because the nipples is because he expects nipples to, one of them should regulate temperature and one of them should tune the radio, apparently.
Absolutely.
Which is what his nipples do.
Yeah, don't try that at home, folks. You'll only cause yourself disappointment and pain, probably. You had the whole recharging gag.
As he says, however much he tries to tweak his nipples, that he can't pick up whatever radio station
Jazz
it is.
FM.
Jazz
He
FM.
loves Jazz FM. Yeah, I loved as well. It's like, what else? He says what else don't human eyes or something feature? And one of the things he said was Quantel, and I was like, that is a deep cut, because Quantel, if I'm not mistaken, is a very old piece of effects software from the 1980s that the BBC. You might know this, and then some audience members. In Doctor Who, in the Trial of a Time Lord, in the Mind Warp section on Thoros Beta, you have the pink sky and the blue, or the pink sea, or whatever it is when they arrive. That, I think, is Quantel. It's like an effects overlay system. Oh. Well, that's what I know the name from. And it makes sense in that, Kryten's he expects mechanoid features. Maybe Quantel is one of them. And I was like, wow, if that's what it is, that's a very deep reference.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like an Easter egg for those in the know, like those that might work in TV or whatever.
In the industry,
industry. But, they didn't expect most people to pick up on that one. Most people would just go, what's Quantel? Yeah.
I mean, full disclosure is we both are. We're massive nerds. So, of course, I was like, Quantel, yes, I know what that is. But no, I
am also a massive geek, but I had no idea what Quantel was.
I think if I hadn't read all those Doctor Who history books, I would have been like, what's Quantel? But yeah, it stuck out to me. I was like, I know that word from somewhere. So I'm pretty sure it's some old effects software.
Yeah.
And you have the recharging gag, which is funny, all to be topped off by the penis gag.
Funny. I'm declaring it now. This was the funniest moment in the episode.
No, I'm
just doing it now. We're talking about it now.
No,
Won't save it for the end. This is the funniest moment in the episode.
And what's funny is, when he first says it, when he's like, I'd like to talk, because he's like, I'd like to talk to you about some things, but I'm not sure. And, it's like, oh, come on, I'm a 23rd century guy, I'm open-minded, let's do it.
Oh, incidentally, 23rd century, I think that's the first time
I was going to ask you about
we've
this,
had like an actual reference to the dates they're from, when they're from.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not still in the 23rd century because he slept
No.
for 3 million years. So 23rd century plus 3 million. But that's when they, when the ship set out, when the crew died and everything.
Because I wasn't sure, because he said it and I was like, have we heard? And I thought, no, I don't think we have heard that before. Or maybe it's been alluded to, I'm not sure. But yeah, that was interesting. But then when he says, I'd like to talk to you about my penis, and Craig Charles' reaction, I'm still not sure. Because, Craig Charles is a funny guy, but immediately, I know, like, Kryten plays like, oh, it's that smirk or, like, childish reaction. But I wonder if that was Craig Charles ever so slightly corpsing, like, as actors do. I don't know what it is. It's just...
It worked,
the way he looked as if it... Do you know what I mean? You can see actors, like, break their focus. I don't know. It just seemed like one of those... And you say it worked. It's one of the few times where if he had done it, it would have absolutely worked. Because I guess as well, they're filming in front of a live studio audience, and maybe he's clocking them, and he's like, "Oh God, I've got." So, but no, you're right. This whole sequence was definitely the funniest sequence. My funniest moment, actually, it's a bit different from what we normally do, and I think I'll save that to the end. But this, in terms of just like scenes, yeah, it's the funniest scene in the episode because of how the two play it and how Robert Llewellyn's expression, his face. He has such an expressive face. Like, yeah. He, honestly, actors do it all the time, but I just think, because obviously he must be so used to doing it under all the Kryten makeup, but when you just see his natural, it might, it's very Jim Carrey, the way his eyebrows move, and he can contort his mouth and his eyes and his face, like, those were some of the funniest moments of this whole gag for me, just his reactions to what Lister's saying.
I'm curious.
Go for it.
This whole scene and how long all this penis stuff went on for, was it too long for you, Adam? That could take two. That could have 2 me's there.
I can't believe you said that.
Was the penis section too long for you, Adam?
This is the most after dark episode we've ever done, or so far anyway. Do you know what, Phil? No, it wasn't too long for me because back to Robert partly. Well, both of them, how they played it, but Robert Llewellyn's expressions kept it going for me. There were just all these little things. I'm a big fan of like physical expression within actors, especially in comedy. It's not useful all the time, but considering, Kryten in this stage is playing the innocent, he thinks this is a normal conversation, and we're in the eyes of Lister, who find this really funny and really childish. But, Robert, he's like raising his eyebrows at things. He's like, so he if he wasn't as expressive, I would have absolutely been like, yeah, this has gone on for far too long. But it made me laugh even more when he got the 2 Polaroids out and stacked them on top of each other. And it just keeps going. It's great. Keeps going.
It's just because I thought when the initial joke happened, when he said, "Oh, I want to talk to you about my penis," and the look on Desa's, I thought, "Oh, okay, that's the bit that's going to get me." It's going to go on for a little bit longer, but that's the main laugh I'm getting out of this, just because of that expression and the way he said it and everything. But then every time something else, like another bit happened, I laughed even more than the last time. So you had, him saying,
I want to know, is that normal? What, taking photographs of it and showing it to your mates? No, it's not.
And then the bit where he shows the double Polaroids, as you said, and why do you suppose that happened? Obviously referring to him getting an erection.
You get the idea, listeners. And then he explains that he's looking through a tech catalogue or something. And
isn't it over a vacuum cleaner or something?
Of course it's over, blow or suck, ha ha ha, It's all very... It's all... That's the fascinating thing about this gag, though. As I think, as Kryten says, when you break it down, it is very childish, but the way it's played out is very funny.
No vacuum cleaner should give a human being a double Polaroid.
It could have easily, if it hadn't been handled as well, I feel it could have easily been very cringeworthy, depending on how they'd gone about it. But no, they absolutely sell it. One thing I will say though, I would count this as separate because the main thing about the penis gag's finished. I think it's before the scene changes when Kryten tells 2 jokes. One about how many.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Well, I don't know why they were there, because they are just sort of two random jokes for the sake of it. It seems they're not really connected to. Because Disney literally say, "Oh, how about a joke?" And it's like, okay, where's this come from? And I noticed usually the studio audience always have a murmur. There wasn't even really a murmur at those two jokes, and I was like,
Yeah,
So I just don't know.
They
why
didn't
they were
work
there,
for me either. They were
really.
just a bit oddly placed, and
Maybe elsewhere in the episode, but after that, I mean, after the funniest part of the episode, it just seemed a bit. Did we need more? Did we need two random jokes? Like, I don't know. It just, very out of place. Very out of place. But moving on, we do get a scene where Kryten enters, I'm saying like a storage room of sorts, I suppose, where we see 3 different Kryten heads, his spare heads. And he has a little chat with them about him being a human and them not being too keen on it. And I mean, the Yorkshire head got me, being a Yorkshireman myself. Just he was, oh yes, and props to Robert Llewellyn for doing a very stereotypical Yorkshire. Be off with you and all that. It was amusing.
because of a defective voice chip or something. There was a line in there that explained it.
Because we are defective, of course. But no, it was very funny. It was. Oh yeah, he says, "Oh, I ain't got the voice chip or something." But yeah, what did you think of that whole?
The spare
room
heads
scene?
are things that will come back. They're going to be... I'm not sure if it's the same spare heads, but there are going to be more spare heads. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler, to be honest.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
But yeah, no, that was interesting. Yeah, I like that. And it kind of also tied in, the conversation they were having about you shouldn't have done that. You should, you left us behind and all that sort of stuff. And where that also ties back, I think it was earlier, when he's having a conversation with Lister about whether or not they turn him back or not, and he doesn't want to be turned back. And Lister's like, you've got to be true to who you are. And I wanted to get your take on that. I think, because there's multiple ways to read that, I think. And I wasn't quite sure if they were trying to say anything. It could be a commentary on sort of things like plastic surgery, and I think that's probably the most likely of given the time it was created.
Considering the era,
the era. But I think these days it kind of felt a little bit icky, the kind of conversation they were having.
Yeah, because as I say, that phrase, I guess, true to who you are, like nowadays, you can interpret that as whatever you feel most comfortable with. You might be, I guess, just as the analogy, if you are, born a male, but you feel your truest self is identifying as a woman, that, that's fair enough. But as you say, in the context of this episode, considering he's saying that to Kryten, being
I think it was one of the spare heads that said like something along the lines of born a mechanoid, die a mechanoid, or something like that. And it just felt. I mean, obviously this is the 1980s. I have a feeling that they were going for more of a kind of commentary on plastic surgery.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
Cosmetic plastic surgery for, just, I don't know, make yourself look nicer or whatever. And that's its own debate, whether or not thing. But yeah, it just kind of felt a little bit like a bit icky at the moment.
Yeah, I think it sadly suffers as one of those, the whole, older programs whose messages or meanings are vague enough. They don't, as you say, they don't specifically state it's about plastic surgery, but it's vague enough that in a modern context it could be interpreted as a very different, more negative connotation, I suppose. So I guess keeping an eye of what era this is in, because 1991, that was, people like Michael Jackson, and he had all the tabloids of he's having too much surgery, and loads of other Hollywood stars, I'm sure, around that time were having loads of stuff. I think that's when Botox really became a thing as well, the early 90s, I want to say, all that sort of stuff.
It's not like, and that sort of commentary is still around now, people commenting on whether or not people trying to still look younger than they are and things. With the recent, I noticed it flare up again with the recent Friends reunion, that people all over online were commenting on work that they might have had done, their friends.
Right, okay. Yeah. No, I think my take on it is like, it's a message that can be interpreted, as we say, in many different ways, but I guess just remember when this was made, and Yeah, I just think that's important in this case. You know, I don't think
I
don't
agree,
think
yeah.
they were. Yeah, I don't think they were out to attack any specific group of people back in 1991. But I can understand why people might feel that way now, watching it. So yeah, it's just one of those that have been a bit battered by history, shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody watching this has a perspective on that we don't
please,
have,
yeah.
you know, then please do let us know in the comments on YouTube and stuff. We'd love to hear your opinions on it. If you know, if you feel that, you know, reflects you or comments on your own situation, then let us know what you think about it in the comments below.
Absolutely. Another thing I'd be curious to get your perspective on as well is, I don't think this is, it didn't feel as icky, but I just found it interesting. I think it's the scene before the storage room, actually, or maybe just after. Actually, no, it's just after. Sorry, getting my scenes mixed up. Is when it's Lister and Kryten are having a chat, and Lister talks about, I can't remember exactly what it was.
Is it
the class traitor thing.
Yeah, the class traitor thing.
Yeah.
Where he said he went into a wine bar once.
Yeah, now he's like, the class traitor gag, I did laugh. I was like, that's funny. Because, you know, that obviously, even now, there are parallels. You know, oh, you drink wine instead of beer? Oh, you must be, you know, very upper class or whatever. You know, as the joke, you know, that's the gag. The more expensive you drink, the higher class you are. And most of the things he said were, I guess, linking to that stereotype. You know, like the whole, oh, I'll be playing squash with a guy called Gerald, or this, that, and the other. But it was when he was like, oh, I'll be getting married instead of going out with people. I was like,
yeah, that was a bit odd.
I don't know.
I was kind of on with the joke, and then I was like, oh, but that's a different thing. That's not a class thing.
Yeah, because I thought
working class people get married. Working class people.
Yeah, because to me, I don't know. Maybe I read too deep into it, but that read to me as like, okay, so working class people, according to this episode, don't get married. They just go out with people and essentially, I guess, sleep around as a byproduct of it, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. As I say, it wasn't as icky as the whole true to yourself.
Yeah,
thing,
I wouldn't say it was icky. It just
was just an odd one. It was just very odd.
That kind of threw me out of the joke a little bit because it was like I was on board with it as a joke. You know, wine bar and stuff. It has, you know, because it is stereotypes.
Yeah.
So it's not meant to be like true to reality. In reality, there's nothing wrong with being, you know, working class person who goes into a wine bar or enjoys wine instead of beer or whatever. But I was kind of on board with it, and it was mostly seen to be aimed sort of punching up rather than down, which is always what you should do with comedy. But just that weird bit about the marriage bit was like, oh, that doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the list that you're reeling off. Yeah,
just odd. One scene I have forgot to, or at least mentioned, so my memory's clearly all over today. Sorry, Robert Llewellyn, I clearly can't remember what you look like. But there's an earlier scene where it's everyone bar Kryten in the dorm, if you like, and Lister tells them the story about when he saw the squirrel and how, he, you know, the whole, for a moment, he would have traded places and all that. Do you really believe him on that?
Yeah, I didn't. I'm not sure.
I don't know, because the way it was written sounded like, you know, he's talking about, because I think it's also in that point, obviously before the events of the end of the episode, you know, Kryten wants to stay human, and Lister's trying to talk him out of it, but then he starts having his own doubts, you know, oh, well, maybe I'd be happier being something else, you know, and the way that squirrel story is told is told quite. Well, there are a little bit of laughs in there, but he tells it very seriously, you know, that it's not overplayed or anything like that. And I don't know, I always thought Lister seemed quite comfortable in himself, because this memory is also before the events of, you know, the opening episode where everyone dies. If he was talking about he had this moment after, you know, when he's the last human, I'd get it maybe a bit more. But considering it's, I don't know, I just didn't believe it as much. I don't know.
I think during that whole scene, I was mostly focused elsewhere on the fact that they had completely retconned his history of Kachansky.
Oh, have they done that again?
Because if you in this, I think it's as he goes into that story about the squirrel, because he's talking about just after he'd been dumped by Kachansky.
Oh yes,
but up until this point, he'd never even gone out with Kachansky. Like every other time, it was that Kachansky was, when she's been referenced, has been a person that he fancies and is kind of infatuated with, but has barely gotten the courage to talk to.
Yeah.
And now this is the first time it's retconned that he actually dated her.
Yeah, I mean,
So that's that. I mean, I was just like, so I wasn't paying
Oh,
attention
that's
to the
happened.
squirrel stuff because
Yeah.
I was like, they've retconned. This is where they retcon Kachansky to be his ex.
I mean, with the nicest will in the world, I think we've established that the Red Dwarf creators don't really care that much about continuity. Like,
No,
in
they
some
don't.
respects,
There was I always peruse the trivia section on IMDb, which take with a pinch of
yes.
salt. I don't know how true it is. Anybody, as Nathaniel pointed out last week, anybody can edit these. But apparently, both Doug Naylor, one of the writers, and Craig Charles had explained that it just didn't make sense to them for his infatuation with Kachansky to be as deep as it was if he barely
Sure.
knew her.
Yeah.
And they felt it was unrealistic. I would say unrealistic and a little bit stalkery.
Unrealistic in Red Dwarf, no way.
Well, true, yeah.
So, yeah.
But also a little bit stalkery. But at least that now his infatuation with her is a little bit more understandable and not creepy. As creepy.
We don't no ick, please. We don't want that in our Red Dwarf. But there you go. I mean, you obviously having seen it before, you've got more of an idea of the overall continuity. But I guess that just shows, like we've seen before,
there is
how exactly how willing that they just change things on a dime. But I think, as we've also said, this is one show where it can get away with it somewhat, given the nature of it.
Yeah,
But
we'll let it off.
yeah, we'll let it slide. But after that conversation with Kryten, Kryten does decide he wants to be a mechanoid again, and so they go back to the ship. But they got to do a test run first. Safety first. So they decide to test it on Lister's curry, is vindaloo. To turn it, they want to turn it into a chicken vindaloo. Is that what they say? From a mutton
lamb
vindaloo. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mutton vindaloo to a chicken.
And through the powers of BBC special effects, it becomes the mutton vindaloo beast.
It does.
Um,
Can I just point out here though that
course.
why was the not alien, but the other ship's computer voice coming out of Holly's mouth?
Yeah, they don't
That
really.
was odd.
Yeah, they don't really explain, because Holly wasn't there the first time, was she?
No.
Like when it all happened. No. So
Yeah.
is it implying has she plugged into the interface?
I don't know.
Because they say that
didn't-
they're saying, "Oh, Holly, you can get this right." So it implies that she's the one
Maybe.
control. Yeah, but
Maybe
it
I
is.
missed
It's
something.
I think that they do say a lot because they blame Holly for the vindaloo beast, and then later when Lister transforms again, she says, "Oh, I'm getting better" or something like that. But yeah, the other computer, yeah, it's a bit weird. It's a little bit weird. But the mutton vindaloo beast is on the loose. It's the finest BBC money can buy, and we basically get what feels like a rehash of Polymorph for the next few minutes,
Which they reference. Clearly they knew.
which they know. They know
They know
exactly.
this.
Yeah, down to the guns and being chased around probably the BBC warehouse or whatever it is. It's
Yeah,
all
and
very
it's apparently been
tongue-in-cheek.
what did they say? It's been a year to the day since something like that. Since
He said like a year last Easter Sunday, and I double checked to see if that was when Polymorph first went out, but it didn't. Polymorph went out in November or December of 1989, so it's Easter Sunday for them. But I did think, I was like, oh, is that a nice little reference to transmission dates? But I don't think it is. But hey,
no, there was a reference to another film though. Who can the same Smeg happen? No, I'm getting this mixed up. I'll just put the line in. That's what I'll do in the editing.
Okay.
Who can the Smeg happen to the same guy twice? That's somebody hasn't written this right.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a reference to Die Hard 2. That's a line from Die Hard. Basically,
okay.
add Smeg in, and that's take away Smeg, and that's a line from Die Hard 2.
That must be because Die Hard 2 must have come out around that time, I think. I know the first one was
1990.
Oh, there you go, year before. So very, very topical reference of its time. That was weird because I haven't seen Die Hard. I've only ever seen the first Die Hard, which is, I think, very good. And yeah, the way he was said it, you know, when they like doing a reference, you can tell it's very much a movie reference line because they do that action voice, you know, like how can this happen to the same guy twice? So I was like, this is definitely a reference, but straight over my head. But there you go, Die Hard 2. I'll have to give that a watch. And they try and solve it the same way as Polymorph with their guns, which don't work. But then Lister has a plan. He goes back to the computer room and asks Holly to make him superhuman or Man Plus. And I like that, Man Plus. That's quite cool. And doesn't quite go that well, does it?
RoboCop. Mini RoboCop.
But it's so blatantly a rip-off. How did the BBC get away with that?
I don't know, it does look like they've almost used the same costume and just like battered half of it in to make it slightly different, doesn't it? It's, I mean, a very much cheaper version of the same costume. But
I mean, we as creators have talked about before the infamous copyright system on YouTube and fair use. How on earth did the BBC get away with that back in the day? I mean, I would say they would have paid for the, like, just in case, but they're on a limited budget. So maybe they thought, oh, well, this is just enough.
Chance it.
This is just enough of a transformation.
Yeah.
Maybe if they painted it black, any other colour than silver, like, very RoboCop. And a high-pitched voice now, because he's a little bit smaller.
Little teeny one.
Little teeny one.
Little teeny
And I must admit, you know, I looked at the time code. I was like, there's 2 minutes to go. He's tiny. The guns don't work. How the hell are they going to, as we often say, I was like, this is going to be one of those quick endings. It's going to happen. And sure enough, Lister tips over a can of lager, which the Vindaloo beast steps in. And of course, as we all know, lager is Vindaloo's one big weakness. And the monster explodes in dramatic fashion.
I've never had a Vindaloo. Have you ever had a Vindaloo?
I think I've tried a little bit because in our family, we have a mixed love of spice. My dad loves spicy food. Like, he can hack anything, like including Vindaloo. And I think he got me to try it when I was younger to my disgust. I don't mind. I'm a very, like, mild spice. You know what I mean? I can handle a bit of spice, but I can't do.
I'm a lamb sander man myself, so pure weak, barely spicy at all.
I'm about the tikka masala. So yeah, not that spicy, but there's a little kick, tiny little kick in there. But no, from what I've heard, you know, Vindaloos are very nice, from what I've heard, so that's good.
See, I can't hear the word Vindaloo without hearing that football song from the 90s.
From Fat Les.
Yeah, Fat Les.
And at the time we're recording, the Euros are on, so I'm sure it'll be on the radio.
Oh,
Three
yes.
Lions. So, because, you know, it's coming home after all, as we say it is every football tournament there is.
God, you win one game and everybody goes mad.
It's coming home. It's coming home. Yeah, and sure enough, like I said, that is it. The monster explodes. Cat gives a little quip. I can't remember what it is. It's something about him being short or something, and that's it. That's the episode. We don't see how Lister transforms back, anything like that. It's like, nope, that's your lot. But what do you think, before we give like the overall summary and favourites and stuff, what did you think of that whole ending, like the last few minutes of it?
I liked it. Sometimes the really abrupt endings don't work, but sometimes they do, and I think this one worked quite well. It was, you know, a nice gag to end on. The lager thing, I like that gag. It was a good gag. Yeah. It was a good gag.
No, it's neat. It's neat, yeah. I part of me feels like I did enjoy it, but for me, even though they referenced it, it was so much of like a polymorph rehash that part of me was like, for me at least, it wasn't really offering anything too new, I suppose. Obviously, you have like, you know, the Lister being I'm just going to call him Mini RoboCop, you know, and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of like the actual sequence of events, it was virtually almost the same, which is fine. It's not bad. But yeah, I don't know. Part of me was like, it's too much of a rehash for me to, I guess, really get into it as much as I could have. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But and yeah, that's it. And I still hate the end credit font. I don't know why they changed it. It looks awful. Yeah, and I'm gonna say that every single week until it changes again.
Well, we're a third of the way through series 4 now, so you never know. Next series might change. So you've only got another 4 episodes of this font to potentially get through.
I hope so, Phil. I hope so. It's so 1991 that it hurts. So not a good kind of 1991 either. So yeah,
that's a good kind of 1991.
what's a good kind? Oh, like, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, yes.
That's a
Fair
good kind of
play. That is a
1991.
good kind of
I'll just leave it at
1991.
that. Sonic Hedgehog, there you go. Happy 30th birthday, Sonic. Side note, by the way. There you go. And now I feel old.
You don't get to say that around me.
I said it and I was like, he's going to say, so you get to say that. So that is DNA in a nutshell. So Phil, in our list of regular features that we do, who was your favourite character in this?
I'm going to do it again. This is the third week running. I've got to give it to Kryten.
Oh, the hat trick.
The hat trick. He's scored a hat trick. He's just so good in this. And it's just, like you said earlier, it's the facial expressions.
Yeah.
It's just like, he's just so engaging to watch. He's so funny. That scene as well, that whole penis scene is just, yeah. He was really good. It really showed off his abilities and his acting range and everything. His timing and everything as well. Comic timing was great. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give it to Kryten again.
Well, you know what? I'm going to join you. Hat trick for Kryten. Absolutely. I mean, with a performance like that, how can you not? How could you not?
It was just, up until we gave him, up until the end, the very last episode of last series, he hadn't been our favourite character at all because he'd been so in the background, and now he's had 3 episodes in a row, which are pretty much on the trot, which are pretty much just Kryten episodes. He's the main focus of 3 episodes in a row. Yeah,
I wonder. Well, will it last for a 4th week? I mean, well, we'll find out next week, I suppose. But it might. Who knows? And well, we've addressed, I guess, the funniest moment, but just to reiterate, it's the penis scene, isn't it?
Yeah,
you said
obviously.
Absolutely. See, for me, that is my favourite moment. Well, my favourite scene, but I wrote my favourite moment, and this might sound odd, but my favourite moment, really specifically, is Robert Llewellyn in that scene. Again, like we said, the expressions, the way he delivers lines. Honestly, I want to see him now in more stuff, like where he's not in the Kryten makeup, because I think he's such an interesting and a funny actor to watch without all that stuff. He very much could have been, it reminded me again, I've mentioned it a few times on the show, but he definitely could have been the actor who played Max Headroom back in the 80s, because Max Headroom was very expressive, and I feel Robert Llewellyn could have done that as well, if he'd have wanted to. So yeah, he's just the shining star for me this episode. Just Robert Llewellyn, absolute props to him. And what about overall ratings, Phil? What do you give this one?
I've written down 8 out of 10.
Okay.
So I'll stick with that.
I think solid 8. Yeah,
solid 8 out of 10. I probably would have there are bits of it that are higher than that, and there's not bits of it in the high. Maybe it averages out at 8 out of 10. That one, the scene definitely elevated it. There were some scenes which were a bit weaker, but overall, I'm gonna give it 8 out of 10. Okay,
that's solid. Pretty solid score. That's good. I'm actually gonna go one step lower and give it a 7. Which is one of my lower ones for a while. It did have to focus on the positives first, I guess. Yeah, it did have some great. The scene, of course, was great.
I think if it hadn't been for that scene, it probably would have been a 7. But that scene
that had a whole
it
point of its own.
Whole point just by itself.
That's impressive.
A whole point just for Kryten's penis.
Just for God. The thing, God, we've said things we never thought we'd say on this podcast.
This one's. I'm definitely going to have to mark this as not suitable for kids on YouTube. I'll say.
Yeah. There are some really great. Anything with Robert Llewellyn in, as I said, great. There's some really funny moments. There's some. I just think where it loses points for me, some of the jokes, as we've mentioned, don't land. The 2 random ones Kryten gets at the end of that whole gag. The cat thing at the beginning, as I said, being a bit too long. Just some of the moments not really landing for me. Like in some of the longer scenes, like when you like the whole Lister doing the squirrel thing. I know that was mainly a bit more serious, but that whole scene, I don't remember really laughing that much. Or do you know what I mean? Like you usually remember scenes where you're laughing a lot, and there just seem to be less laughs for me in this one. And again, where it loses points for me is the whole last few minutes. Whilst it is fun, I feel the fact it is very much reminding me of Polymorph and not really. I don't know. It's losing points for me on that. I just feel Polymorph had a fresher impact.
It was only the last sort of 5 minutes.
It was.
Wasn't it?
It was only the last 5 minutes, but Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my 7. That when I finished, when the credits rolled, that was my gut instinct. So I'm gonna stick with that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, there we go. A 7 and an 8. So not bad scores. I don't think we haven't gone below 5 ever, have we? Or have we?
No, 5 was our lowest.
Was it?
From me or you? I'm not sure what Billy gave it.
We'll have to go digging through.
I can't remember what Billy gave
records
it, but I think.
Oh, was it that episode?
That episode got the lowest scores.
Body
all round.
swap.
Body swap. But I
Yeah.
can't remember what Billy gave it. I think I gave it a 5.
Oh, didn't he say like at first a 3, and then we were like, "Ooh, a 3," and he was like, "Oh no, I've got to make it higher," and we were like, "No, it's okay, it's fine." But yeah, that was body swap. That was an episode. But as we've mentioned before, apparently when we get further down, apparently series 7 and 8, apparently there's some ones in there. So I'm told. But hey, we've got a long way to go before we get there. But that's it for
We're
this
almost
episode.
halfway there, though.
We are
To that point.
which is crazy. Halfway through the original 8 series. That's mad. God. Well, we'll plough on next week. You can join us for Series 4, Episode 3, where we'll be doing our usual review there. And thank you for joining us this time. But Phil, where can the good people find you and indeed this podcast?
The best place to find me is my YouTube channel, which is just Philip Hawkins. I was going to say, is it Phil or Philip? But it is Philip. It is Philip Hawkins. And it's a picture of me in front of some TARDIS roundels at the moment.
Oh, yes.
Is my avatar. So I talk about Doctor Who a lot. That's why. But I also talk about other geeky pop culture, the MCU, and all sorts of other things. I've gone blank on the other things now. Star Trek. Talk about Star Trek quite a lot.
Star Trek.
Various other geeky pop culture. Anything that takes my fancy, really. Got videos, not just reviews, all sorts of videos on there about those. And you can find this very show's own Twitter account at All Dead Dave Pod.
That's the one. All Dead Dave Pod, because everybody's Dead Dave is taken.
It was.
Which is
Well, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't taken.
Oh, wasn't it?
It exceeds the character limit of Twitter.
All about the limits, aren't they, Twitter? Character limits, tweet limits. It's not good. It's not helpful, guys. But yeah, All Dead Dave Pod. Go and follow us there. And if you want to check out any of my work, it's just Adam Martyn on YouTube with a Y. I also talk about Doctor Who as well as some other things. Follow me on Twitter as well, Adam Martyn AMTV, for my daily ramblings. And yeah, that's about it. Well, with that said then, this has been fun as always, and we've enjoyed having you here. Let us know your comments as well. Please let us know your thoughts on the pod. If you're listening on YouTube, we love your feedback, love your opinions.
Hit that like button, subscribe.
Hit that like
share,
button, subscribe to Phil.
All that jazz.
Do it all. Just do it all. Everything. Do it all and everything. And until the next one, we'll catch you in the next episode. See ya.
See you later.